Good. Penny, reminder, bowling tonight at 7 o'clock.
You don't have to come if you don't want to.
No, it's okay. I mean, let's face it, you guys would get creamed without me.
We would indeed. In this particular case, your lack of femininity works to our advantage. Remember, 7 o'clock.
Got it.
Pacific Daylight Time.
Bite me.
Please reserve that butch spirit for the lanes.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I got to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what's the trope we're talking about tonight?
Tonight, we're talking about bowling.
Bowling episodes of sitcoms could not be more straightforward. This is something that I've seen all the time in many a sitcom show. One of the reasons that we're talking about this was because one of our listeners was a model citizen and wrote to us at sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com. This was Michael. He suggested a handful of really good tropes over the last few months, and one of them was bowling.
And he mentioned this According to Jim episode, right? Because we have never done According to Jim. So we're excited to have that. Well, excited and...
Yeah. When we get to that, I think we're going to have to make sure that we're clear that our opinions on the shows that our listeners recommend definitely does not reflect on our opinions of them, even when we think that those shows are maybe what is wrong with society. But yes, Michael suggested bowling, and the shows that we picked, some of which were suggested by him, are just few of many, many sitcom episodes that have to do with this. Another really good one is The Simpsons.
Oh, that's right, that we didn't watch. Yep.
Where Homer does a bowling team, and so there's actually multiple ones, but the original one where Homer and Chief Wiggum and all of them form a bowling team is amazing. So let's talk first about our real life experiences, because this is one I have a definite opinion about.
I would say, we've never been bowling. Do you
correct.
bowl?
It is not by accident that 5 some odd years into our relationship, you have never seen me holding a bowling ball. But ladies first, what is your history with bowling?
My mom was on a bowling league when we first moved to Florida. That was one of her ways to get out there and meet people, because she was a stay-at-home mom then. My brother was still young. It was before he was even in kindergarten. So yeah, she joined a crafting club, and then that crafting club, there were some women in that crafting club who had a little, they were in a bowling league, and so she joined their bowling team and made some friends that way. And the lanes were just at the end of our neighborhood. So across, there's this big highway that is at the end, one end of my neighborhood where I grew up in, and there was a bowling alley across the street. So that was early bowling. Yeah, and then it was just one of those things that we would go galactic bowling, late night bowling, when they would turn all the lights out and do all the
disco bowling.
Yeah, you call everything disco up here. I think we called it galactic bowling or blacklight bowling. That was.
Do you like bowling? Are you good at it?
I'm okay. It's fine. It's not my first choice. It's one of those things that's like ice skating or roller skating. There were birthday parties. You did it. Sometimes it was super fun. It was a field trip every now and then. Yeah, that was all right.
You have more of a normal person's experience where something like that, being good at it, doesn't necessarily factor into your enjoyment of it, because things like bowling, there's a certain baseline of facility to it that most people with some sense of physical coordination have.
So wait, are you going to tell me this has something to do with your lack of athleticism?
Yes.
plus the geometry that is needed, like the physics understanding that's needed to throw the ball?
No, it is your assertion that I don't understand physics.
Well, it's very true.
The only thing that I am willing to admit to is that I'm extremely uncoordinated, and we used to say spastic in the day. I feel like you're not supposed to say that anymore.
You're a spaz.
Very unathletic. And for me, things like bowling are the worst of both worlds in
it's
terms
one
of
at a time.
It's being a team sport, and yet, you go up and do it one at a time.
Like performatively while everyone's drinking their beer.
So you have, and most of my experience with bowling was as a child. There was no beer or alcohol involved. I just very quickly realized, this is something where you have a team of people depending on you, but you still have to go up and do it all yourself and give this very individual sort of performance.
I am so we should have gone bowling together before we did this. We are going to go bowling within the next month, and I will report back to you, dear listeners.
It is, the funny thing is, the times that I actually have been bowling, most of the time, I'm fine at it. When I do badly, I do very badly.
I was going to say, you're strong, so it's not like you can't
That's the thing
do
with
it.
me. As a child, especially, being strong and fast and stuff isn't really what athleticism is about. It's about skill and coordination.
Okay,
and I
that's
didn't
fair.
have any of those. So throwing a bowling ball very strongly directly into a gutter is not going to help you. And so, most of the time I would get the hang of it and I would do fine during bowling. But there would be certain times, specifically as an adult, where I would sort of not pull a muscle, but do something weird with my arm.
Like tweak your thumb.
And my strength would really leave me and I could barely even lift the bowling ball. So I don't tend to enjoy bowling, but I do think it's an excellent setting for movies and TV.
Oh, Big Lebowski.
Yes. But I especially,
Kingpin.
I wish there were more things like that Malcolm in the Middle episode that we talked about at a different time, where things that are entirely set at bowling alleys. Because to me, it's like what we were saying with The Cruise, where it's like sort of one thing but another at the same time. There's this game going on, but it can sort of be in the background and everybody's interacting. And usually bowling alleys have all these different parts to them, and there's also a bar or an arcade or anything. And there's just I think it's a fascinating setting because there's so many sort of overlapping things, interactions and other things going on. All the dynamics and stuff.
They're and we talked about this, I think, like you said, when we did the Malcolm in the Middle episode. Whole relationships have, begun and ended in the bowling alley while games were going on and nobody was paying any attention, for sure.
You mentioned relationships. I'm going to say that all 4 of these that we did watch, we're going to have 4 portraits of romantic relationships here. And I'm going to say one man who isn't a total scourge, right? Just a total blemish on society. We're getting ahead of ourselves. What are our shows? What did we watch?
All right. So we have The Flintstones, Season 2, Episode 24, Fred Strikes Out. And then we're continuing the thread there, right, because we did Roseanne. So you got John Goodman, who plays Fred Flintstone in the movie.
Oh, gee, okay.
Yeah. And then he, of course, is in Roseanne. So we watched Roseanne, Season 4, Episode 14, The Bowling Show. Also in that show, first appearance of Johnny Galecki, who's going to appear later in our last episode, which is Big Bang. But in between those two, we watched According to Jim, Season 1, Episode 8, The Turkey Bowl, and finally The Big Bang Theory, Season 3, Episode 19, The Wheaton Recurrence.
Yeah, all right. So there it is. 4 sitcom episodes about bowling, starting with The Flintstones. We've talked about them once or twice before. And I'm going to say the same probably pro and con, good and bad observation I have about The Flintstones every time. The good thing is the lady characters are so funny. Every time Betty talks, it's so funny to me. It's like she's a play on Ethel from I Love Lucy, or just any number of old-timey sitcom ladies, but their voices are just so funny to me, and their expressions, the very simplistic like way that their faces are rendered, are very, very funny. I always love that aspect of it, but I'll say again and again, they always forget to make it about them being cavemen. There are never
You're
enough
so funny. You
caveman
just
gags.
want more of the anachronism.
Let's start with the bowling. Like
they're using a rock that is got holes cut in it.
Yeah, which
and they've got a pterodactyl that sweeps the pins away.
Okay, all right, that's something. They've got a pterodactyl that sweeps the pins away, and they bowl with a rock. All right, I just want to track that from the start. All the different ways that the story hinges on things that have absolutely nothing to do with prehistoric times, such as Betty and Wilma taking like a personality quiz. Or
they're taking a relationship, like how well you know your husband quiz.
Yeah, in a magazine.
They call it the paper, but it's like 3 stones.
Yeah, it's on
strung
stone
together.
tablets, so that's something. But yeah, so it's like something that would be in Cosmo, where you fill out yes or no questions about your relationship.
Right.
And it's stuff like, does your husband often
forget
do what you say
things?
to
do? Remember appointments, skip dates, tell you fibs, all of these things. And Wilma is answering, kind of negatively, whether it's yes or no, but it's all sort of to the negative, about Fred. But every time she gives a yes or no that kind of indicates that he's not the greatest guy, she always has a caveat. Oh, well, yes, he's always late for these types of things, but he'll tell me why he's going to be late. Or, oh, no, he doesn't get along with my mother, but I understand that because sometimes this and Betty just keeps reminding her, yes or no, Wilma. And so she, sighs and says, goes with the binary without any caveats. And what it turns out is that Fred's a beast. And so Wilma immediately is like, why did I marry him?
Yeah, so by the time Fred gets home with Barney, Betty is storming out, yanking Barney away, going, I don't want you to catch any of his bad habits. And
right.
He's in the doghouse and he doesn't know why. And yeah, it's all very funny. To me,
He's particularly oafish in this episode,
yes.
though.
Why I like it, though, is even just the ladies, all of this. A regular live-action sitcom from this time would not be much more sophisticated. So the fact that it's these cartoon people and the voiceover artists are doing this sort of over-the-top, silly version of it, it's just a perfect fit. And it plays really well to me. Wilma's distress, rethinking her marriage and realizing that Fred, asking him, did you remember to mail that card to my mother? No, sorry, I didn't. Did you remember to get the groceries? No. And yeah, her just being well, it turns out that you are a horrible husband.
And I took a quiz and it told me that. And he's like, oh, Wilma, honey, don't pay any attention to those things. And she's like, well, do you remember what today is?
Yes.
And then it's this ridiculous, it's the 8th anniversary of the day that you proposed to me.
Yeah, but what she keeps saying, that's basically it. But what she says is, it is the 8th anniversary of the day I accepted your proposal of marriage.
Right. It's too many words to say one thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, how could I forget that, honey? Yeah, rolling his eyes.
It's their engagement anniversary, which I just thought was a funny choice because just the anniversary of your engagement isn't that it's kind of a lot for her to insist on having that be a thing in addition to the wedding anniversary. But it's only so outlandish because she insists on calling it the 8th anniversary of the night I accepted your wedding proposal.
Yeah, they absolutely, the writers are going out of their way to make this some oh, she's just overwrought. And then at the end, it comes back around where she's saying, I took that quiz only I thought of myself and I realized I'm just just as bad as you, you
which-
know, and so it's fine by the end. But they really do let him off easy for in a couple of ways. Number one, this overly complex date, right? And I think it's because they do anniversary episodes and they have done anniversary shows. This isn't it.
Well, and like you're saying, they want to thread this needle where it's like, yeah, okay, he doesn't get along with her mother, but he wouldn't actually forget her birthday. He wouldn't actually forget their anniversary. Like, but I want to ask you, the next sort of story beat is that, you know, Fred says, okay, I'm going to change. No more lying, no more broken
Wilma's
promises.
Sobbing at dinner.
So he says, you can count on me. I'm not ever going to try to weasel out of anything or make excuses or whatever. Now, meanwhile, it's been established that their bowling tournament is coming up. Barney and Fred.
The big finals. It's the finals of the bowling tournament, and it's tonight. And she's like, you told me you would take me to the movies, to the drive-in movies. So what do you mean you have bowling?
So this dilemma has already presented itself, right? When he's saying, don't worry, you can count on me. I'm always going to prioritize things. So my question is he lying? Like, is he lying through his teeth and saying, I just have to buy some time and figure out a way to go to the bowling alley?
Yeah. I have to figure out a way to get out of this, whether it's you know, give her some poison and then she's, you know, she doesn't feel, not death poison, but like, you know,
sleeping poison.
Right. No, just like, oh, my tummy hurts, so I can't, I don't want to go out tonight.
That's what he's thinking as he is saying, you have my word, I will be a changed man. Yeah. So,
and then we get a wipe and he's sitting there with Barney and he's like, I got to figure out a way to get out of this.
Right. So kind of a sociopath, like definitely very much, just sort of brazenly like.
But I mean, again, this is so honeymooners, right? Like this is very, there's a funny quote where apparently Jackie Gleason's lawyers told him he could have the Flintstones off the air in a second if he wanted to because of how much they modeled Fred after him. But then his lawyers also said to him, do you really want to be known as the guy who took that off the air when it was like a beloved show already?
Yeah. And, you know, like most people of our generation, I'm more familiar with the Flintstones than with the Honeymooners.
Oh, yeah. It ran longer.
But what I'll say is, and this is the same exact thing we said about Homer Simpson when we were doing the play episode and how his oafish behavior reads differently, that they are cartoons makes it much easier to take. So yes, I think Fred is a sociopath, but it doesn't bother me. Like, I don't find the show to be as like disturbing.
Not like Jim Belushi when he's a sociopath. That bothers me.
So we get a definite overlapping trope here where Fred's solution is, I'm going to do both. I'm going to take her to the drive-in movie, and that's right next door from the bowling alley. I'm simply going to just run back and forth. The movie starting will be my cue to start bowling, and I will basically just, like every time a sitcom character does this, find reasons to excuse myself. They turn out to be candy, popcorn, and some sort of third, peanuts. Candy, popcorn, and peanuts. He has to make different trips for at different times, but that's his plan.
And he never comes back with any of those things.
Yeah, so it is your classic, like, 2 dates to the prom, you know, type thing.
And Wilma gets so into the movie that she doesn't even really notice that he is basically never there.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's very funny the way he constantly, like, he'll get alarmed and he'll go like, oh my God, the peanuts! And run off.
She'll give him a kiss and he's like, peanuts! And she's like, oh, that didn't happen last time 8 years ago when I kissed you.
So the function of bowling in this one is purely like the sort of function it plays in their relationship. Fred is really good at bowling, and he like essentially effortlessly wins the championship. Right. Every time he runs in,
he bowls a strike, runs back out. Like he doesn't have to wait and even do 2 turns because he's just that good. And we also get the other thing that's like the Stone Age that, you know, you always are saying there's not enough of. They're like an Elks Lodge team. Yeah. And so they wear these big fuzzy hats, and I guess it's like the Mammoth Lodge or something like that. And they've got the bones sticking out of each side.
Yeah, he wins the bowling championship, goes back to his date with Wilma.
He gets his thumb stuck in the car door. This is the only episode of the Flintstones ever that there are doors on that car.
He doesn't get stuck in the bowling ball?
No, he's doing the thing where he's like running back and forth, and on his last trip to see Wilma right before he goes back to win the tournament, she leans over to close the door or something while he's running, like he's looking away, and he gets his thumb stuck in the car door. So his thumb is swollen. He goes to bowl. He bowls. All is fine. And then this guy's like, hey, you won. Let me get a picture of you for the paper, which he etches into stone.
Yes, I took note of that. That was a good caveman gag. Okay. That the way that you pose for the morning edition,
prehistoric,
as they say, yes, is
Stone Age.
You have a sort of artist, like courtroom artist type guy that etches
chiseling
you into a tablet.
He's like, this is for the morning edition. So, and then Barney comes over and bloop, sticks the bowling ball on the swollen thumb, and now Fred can't get it off, but he still has to go back and finish his date with Wilma, and he's got this bowling ball stuck on his thumb. So he's like hiding behind the car.
Oh yeah, the whole ride home, he just has his hand sticking out the window, and she doesn't notice that he's got a bowling ball stuck to his hand.
He's like, my thumb's too sore to drive. Let me sit on your side, scooch over. And he's hiding his thumb so she can't see it. It's like hanging out the window.
And so then you have the scene with Barney trying to help him by like prying it through a tree, but they can't tell, you know, Wilma what they're doing. And so this was one of my favorite exchanges when Betty comes in and asks Wilma, oh, where are the fellas? And Wilma goes, where else would 2 grown men be? Playing hide and seek outside. So that was the cover story. We're going to go play hide and seek.
Well, it wasn't even the cover story. That was the second thing that happened, right? First, Barney comes over and they send the women into the kitchen to make sandwiches. They're like, oh, we're really hungry. And he's like, quick, Bonnie, I got her in the kitchen making me some sandwiches. Help me get this bowling ball up my finger. Yeah. And so Barney comes running over with some cold cream. He's like, well, get it all, greased up and then it'll slide right out. It doesn't slide right out. And as he plops, as he tries to, Barney's pulling on the ball and he slips off the ball and goes out the window. And then Fred is over at the window trying to help him back through the window when the ladies come in with the sandwiches. And as a cover, he jumps through the window and they're like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, your turn. Ollie, Oxenfree. Okay. Well, we're playing hide and seek.
That leads them to the point where they are, using a tree to try and leverage the bowling ball off. And instead they propel Fred through his front yard into his house. It's all very silly. The jig is up, right? Wilma ultimately discovers Fred's ruse. He lied to her about everything.
She sees him in the paper the next morning.
Yes, sees him in the morning edition, right? The stone-carved morning edition where he's won the championship to the worship of the town. And then we get this sort of, I don't know if you call it Deus Ex Machina, but in my opinion, bizarre ending where Wilma goes well, you did lie to me about everything, but that personality quiz, I decided to take it myself, and I'm a real weirdo too, so I guess it's all good. And just kind of and that's it.
Yeah,
right?
And he does do the thing of well, Mom, sorry, I won't do that again. And she's like, oh, it's okay, Fred, So I want to put a pin in this, right, about the way these shows that have the kind of, oafish husband, we talk about it all the time, how they learn their lesson lesson, and there's a bit of contrition. Sometimes they apologize, but do they ever really learn their lesson? Question mark. Because we're going to revisit this same kind of nonsense when we get over to According to Jim. And Jim Belushi has some just brilliant things to say about it.
Yeah. I mean, with Fred, it is, again, like what makes him so sort of like Hannibal Lecter-esque is the way he breaks down to her. Like, he's so able to articulate, like, I will not connive. I will not make excuses. I will not break promises. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's able to identify it so, like, specifically and concisely, and then just conspire to do the exact opposite. So definitely. And then the other thing I want to track, again, is just the different role that bowling plays in all of these, because it is... There's overlap, and yet it's different in every one. I would argue this focuses the least on the bowling.
On the bowling,
It purely is a thing. It represents like Fred's guy passions or something that's got nothing to do with his wife. It's his own selfish hobby, and that's kind of, is going to be that for Jim too. But let's just keep track of that, and let's move on to Roseanne.
Season 4, episode 14, The Bowling Show.
Yeah, so this one throws us right in there. It starts at the bowling alley, mid-game. It's Roseanne and Dan, played by John Goodman.
Yep.
And they're bowling with their buddies, Tom Arnold and Sandra Bernhard. I forget what their characters' names are.
Nancy and Arnie.
Yeah, okay. And so they're a couple, a hetero couple, because I feel like this is before Sandra Bernhardt's character comes out as gay in the show.
Right. Well, so this is still kind of early days. Like, she and Arnie are just recently married. They kind of have like a little short-lived romance, and then they break up. And also that kind of coincides with Roseanne and Tom breaking up, or maybe it's when he gets his own show, or he gets his own show and then he leaves. And so then at some point Nancy and Arnold or Arnie break up, and she is like, I'm gay.
Yeah. And it is, to me, it is bizarre seeing Sandra Bernhard playing
straight.
Like it just it's not her.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, she carries herself in a certain way. It's just, I think of her as a gay icon. And
I just always remember her being this lesbian character or this bi character in early 90s, mid to early 90s, when that, like, this is before Ellen, even came out. So I think that was like, it was a big deal to have her on that show. Even though it was a lot of times sort of the butt of a joke. Yeah, well, and also even just apart from her sexuality, she is just a very anti-commercial presence. They're just her look, her voice, her whole persona. I don't know what you're talking about, Jay.
It's great. And maybe I want to pause and sort of say about Roseanne in general. Like, I'm just thinking about her a little bit and her show. It's, as a kid, I was like, I didn't get it. And I remember this being on and her being in movies like She-Devil and stuff and being like, so is the joke just how annoying she is? Like, is it just like that? Like, that's why she's famous. And now I sort of look at this show and go like, is there any earlier example of like a woman at the center of a show who's just like the comedy, this is the same time that you had people like Sam Kinison in center stage, or, the Belushi brothers for that matter. Right. Where it's like, nobody gives a shit if they are sexy. Nobody cares if their voice is pleasing. Like, they're funny because they're funny, and they're the center of the show because they're entertaining and interesting. And certainly there had been women like Lucille Ball where it's like, oh, she's not like, she wasn't famous for being super hot. She was famous for being funny. Right. But I feel like Roseanne is taking that next step of like, let's have someone who's like decidedly not hot in the usual way and not like pleasant in the ways that we typically think of
exactly. You definitely had that, like, you could be loud and annoying and in a kind of way, but there was still, Lucille Ball and Carol Burnett definitely did that, but they also were very attractive. And they also had this sort of like high class kind of thing, right? They would play down class some other, like in sketches and in things, but for the most part, they were high status, right? Yeah. Roseanne has all of that, like I'm I'm annoying, I'm just, whatever, but also the low status in terms of socioeconomic and in terms of like the attractiveness factor because of the weight and and that's horrible to say. We don't say that now. I know.
It's the whole package. It's the whole way she presents herself. But again, it's like getting on this by talking about Sandra Bernhard and seeing the show through a whole new way where it's almost like the sitcom version of a John Waters movie. Like she's gathering all of these sort of weirdos. Yeah. John Goodman too. Like he was starting to be in movies and he absolutely had a career going, but she and whoever else put this show together were able to recognize, like, oh, this guy is really, really good.
Oh my God. Can you, like that, I think there were like 3 or 4 scenes of bowling, right? Where they were just at the bowling alley in that spot. And John Goodman is acting circles around everyone in the scene, like by just sitting there and looking at the lanes. Yeah. Silently, other people are talking and he is like, he's just so good. He's got a couple of scenes with Tom Arnold and it's like, God, I wonder if he is as annoyed by him as I am professionally, but maybe not. Maybe he's a better person than me.
It is, yeah. And just watching when John Goodman actually takes his bowling shots and he's playing that concentration and everything, it is amazing. But yeah, so all of that is just to say that the cast of this show is great and is just so interesting, the people that she chooses and herself. And
and I think Chuck Lorre is a part of this, right? Wasn't he? I think he is. I think he was one of the one of the writers. Maybe he wasn't like I don't think he like did the show. And this one, a main writer on this episode in particular was Amy Sherman at the time, now Amy Sherman Palladino, who we know from Gilmore Girls and Bunheads, which nobody watched but me, and Mrs. Maisel. Exactly.
Yeah. And so this, like I said, it's going to start us right in the bowling game. They're part of a league. This is all similar to, I guess, the Flintstones and all these others, where it's sort of taking it for granted. Like, oh, yes, of course, bowling is part of these people's lives. Like they're on a team, they play in a league. And so it sort of just kind of gives you this backstory of like, oh yeah, they've always been in last place. And, the loser of the playoffs always has to drink beer out of the other person's shoe and all that. And so this is going to be another one where it's, the relationships are in the foreground. This one's actually sort of hung up on this thing going on with Jackie having slept with Sandra Bernhardt's husband and then being friends with her, and Roseanne feels left out. Like there's a lot of story stuff that's really kind of taking center stage, even though a lot of this does take place at the bowling alley.
Yeah. What I like about this is that so many times, like this is one of very few Roseanne episodes that aren't at the diner or the kitchen or their house or the diner. Because I think this is still early enough that she's working at the diner, right? So I think that's what's so nice about it. I was really enjoying this and this is probably a sweeps episode. Let me see when this was aired, because we had David Crosby guest star and he played part of a song and then a full song. This is the end of January in 1992, so not sweeps weeks, but this is, it was like a packed cast.
Was David Crosby like a recurring character on this? He seemed like pretty sort of like familiar with them.
I don't know.
And was he playing himself?
He was not playing himself. He was playing a dude that is, he was playing Duke. And he was just a guy that they know who plays music at the bar and owns the bar that's like in the basement of the bowling alley.
I thought he was Gallagher when he first came out.
That is hilarious. He is not Gallagher, but in terms of like queer icons, right? Like David Crosby is the sperm donor for every lesbian's baby in Hollywood. You know this, right? So David Crosby is the sperm donor for Melissa Etheridge and her wife, for like 3 other lesbian couples and their kids. That is like, he's like, yeah, I love lesbians. You want kids? Sure, here you go.
Yeah, I mean, he's hanging out with this very, sort of like open-minded crowd here. Yeah, I have a note in here that Darlene at this time, we don't get much of the kids in this episode, but she was one of my dream girls when I was a teenager. This Noxzema girl hair, that big poof of curly hair.
Well, so the tag at the end of this episode specifically speaks to the hair. This is Johnny Galecki's very first appearance on Roseanne ever, and his name isn't David. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I thought I heard you. I heard
his
say something
name
else. Kevin?
is Kevin in this episode. He's billed as Kevin. He's called Kevin. It's the tag at the very end of the episode. So if you're watching on streaming, it'll cut it off. You have to like watch. You have to say watch credits so that you can actually see it. But it's yeah. So there, like you said, there's not a lot of Darlene. We established earlier on. DJ is acting like a little brat at the bowling alley, so the parents don't want him to come the next night when they go back. So Roseanne asks Darlene if she'll babysit. She says, no, I've got some stuff going on. But then at the very end of the episode, this guy, Kevin, comes over to pick up his brother or tell his brother who's dating Becky it's time to come home. And they're having this great conversation. And he's like, oh, hey, I really like your hair. And she's like, thanks, I like yours too. And Dan and Roseanne are just standing there watching this exchange happen. And they're like, oh, isn't that cute? Darlene's got herself a friend. Oh. And then Roseanne goes, his name is Kevin and he's Mark's little brother. And Dan's like, nope. And goes and like pushes him out the door because he doesn't like Mark at all. But yeah, so that's it. That's the first introduction. And we get a very small but double dose of Johnny Galecki.
Yeah, well, and the truth is, looking back on it, that was a reason why I didn't get into this show. We were teenagers when this was on. If there was more Darlene stuff, if it was more about her and her relationship with Galecki, because it was once in a while, I would have been into it. But this show, like, that wasn't the focus.
Yeah,
it was more the adults.
it was adults.
And so, yeah, I remember being frustrated with that and switching over to Charles in Charge so I could get Nicole Eggert because they weren't giving me enough Sarah Gilbert.
Yeah. But so I just really, what I liked about this episode, though, was that there was a lot of just grown-ups going out and like having a night out and, with kids and what does that mean? And sometimes you got to take one kid to the bowling alley with you. And then he's coming up, when DJ came up and was like, Mom, I need my money for the video games, and literally screaming like that. It just reminded me of me and my little brother when we would go out for pizza with the parents and we were like, we wanted to play the Simpsons game and we're like, we need more quarters. Yeah. And they're just like, yeah, okay. They're trying to have a nice night. They're trying to have grown-up time away from the kids, and the kids are still there.
Yeah, and that's why, it's a little hard to talk about the episode because it is very much a slice of their lives, and there are these sort of overarching stories that are unfolding, and they're sort of appropriately low-key. Like I said, Roseanne is feeling left out because Jackie, her sister, Laurie Metcalf, always amazing. She's getting along well with Sandra Bernhard, and she's, the joke is like she feels left out because they didn't take her ice skating.
Well, they've got a
and
plan to go ice skating, and Roseanne's like, wait, since when were you guys friends, and why am I not invited? And they're like, you don't like ice skating. And so she kind of pouts the whole episode. For the back half of the episode, she's all pouty about not being invited, feeling like she's going to be left out of the friendship. And then the minute they're like, well, we didn't invite you because you have a bad back. Like they've been talking about her bad back all throughout the episode, how she can't can't bowl, and she has them mark down spares for her.
Yeah.
And so she gets invited, and then she immediately is like, well, why don't we, do this other thing instead?
Bowling?
Yeah. Does it have to be ice
movie?
skating? Can't we see a movie?
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's great that that's what this show is about, and John, Dan and Tom Arnold have their thing going on because, Dan has to back out of his construction job, and Tom Arnold is feeling like he's like big dogging him. But it's all just like these little things that are happening.
Yeah, and the
meanwhile,
rest of the team decides that both Arnie and Dan bowl better when they're mad.
Yeah.
So they keep like egging on this fight so that they'll win. And they do. And they come out of last place so they don't have to drink beer out of anybody's shoes. And their chant is, there's somebody worse than us. There's somebody worse than us.
Yeah, which is kind of like the Cheers, I feel like the Cheers episode we saw where they had to bowl against their
the rival
rivals
bar.
had a similar, like sort of self-degrading chant. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that the studio audience, when David Crosby plays his first song, like they come back from an act break or something and he's sort of finishing up like a live performance, the studio audience does not applaud, but they do applaud Tom Arnold and John Goodman's make-believe bowling strikes when they just like throw the bowling ball past the camera and the sound effect goes. The audience applauds them winning the game, which I think was funny.
Yeah. But so that first time we see David Crosby playing that part, that little short ending bit, they're doing a slow pan of the bar and it's empty. And so that's why I feel like they don't have the audience clap, because they just have the like two women, the three women sitting there doing the clapping. Then later on, we get a packed house, full performance, and the audience is going wild.
Yeah. And so they've won the tournament. And I think the show is sort of, unlike the Flintstones one, I think you're meant to be like a little bit invested in I hope they win, and it's just it's kind of a little bit of everything. This is one where the bowling, I think, does not represent any sort of male, avoiding your wife or it's the bro time that, Dan happily includes Roseanne in the bowling activity. It's it just doesn't serve that function at all. There's the fun recurring joke, like you mentioned, where Roseanne always gives herself a spare when no one's looking, and then Dan comes back and is like, "Oh, I see you gave yourself a spare," But so it doesn't have that function. It is just more like a milieu, if you will, just sort of a setting and a fun backdrop.
This was a feel-good episode of this show. We've watched other episodes of this show where it's you can always just see John Goodman being such a great actor. Sometimes you get really great writing. Sometimes you get a funny joke here and there, or a good bit. Usually you get some good bits. But yeah, this episode was just a good time. It felt like a nice night out with your friends. It was enjoyable.
Yeah, and Roseanne's acting is really interesting too. I've noticed the way that she, for better or worse, she'll a lot of times not be totally on top of the lines, and she'll have these little slip-ups and stuff, almost like the way Woody Allen would be famous for always kind of stammering and kind of starting things over. There's a certain sort of authenticity to her where it's she's not trying too hard to sort of hit the rhythms, or she's got this sort of lackadaisical energy to the way she's approaching her acting, her performance. But
not in a bad way.
No, in a way that's
in a way that is character driven.
Yeah, in a way that's very real. That's sort of she is this character that she's playing. This character wouldn't learn all the lines down to a T and block every single movement. And so she doesn't do that.
Yeah,
and
she is playing herself, though.
Yeah, but so there's this looseness where you can feel her the same way, like in the old Happy Day episodes, you see them like almost knocking down the set and they just keep going. Like you feel her kind of like not, like I said, just not totally being on top of the dialogue, kind of like, you know, stalling a little bit or flubbing a little bit. And it all just kind of works into this sort of natural like vibe she has.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if we have as many nice things to say about According to Jim.
Season 1, Episode 8, The Turkey Bowl.
Yeah, so this is our first time talking about According to Jim. Let's just take it nice and slow. Why don't you just explain when this was on, how it came to be? I feel like I remember this vaguely being on. I've seen it once or twice. I knew that Courtney Thorne-Smith from Melrose Place was the wife. But this was definitely a time when I was not paying much attention to TV, definitely not paying much attention to Jim Belushi. So what are we dealing with here?
All right. So this is another one of these kind of the Honeymooners was the blueprint, right? Then you have the Flintstones, and then you just kind of have every sort of family sitcom that centers the dad from now until eternity. It's Ray Romano, it's King of Queens, it's you got the guy, and he's kind of, you know, a dumbass, and he's got a super hot wife, and everyone's like, how did you end up with that? And so then comedy ensues, and it's just sort of based around whether or not that main guy has enough charisma, like Tim the Toolman Taylor in Home Improvement, to keep people coming back week after week.
Yeah, the answer is no, but I'm not asking like what
it was on the air from 2001 to 2009. It ran for 8 seasons. The last couple of seasons were a little bit weird because that was when the writer's strike happened in like 7, 8.
Yeah. I guess what I'm asking is, do you have a sense of who or why they thought it was time for Jim Belushi to be the center of this show? Because all the shows you're describing, it's like, yes, that is basically what they are. It's some dumbass guy and his inexplicably hot wife. But like Ray Romano was a popular stand-up comic on the rise.
Sure, but he was not a guy I had ever heard of, right?
No, but he was a logical successor to Jerry Seinfeld or someone like that.
Yeah, but that was a totally different type of show. I think what you had happen from about like 96 to about 2010 is you just had a million of these in pilot season, right? Every single dude had one of these shows. I'm sure there was one at one point that centered Jay Moore, and it never got out of pilot stage.
No, Jay Moore, that show is real.
He was the center.
I don't know if exactly he was a dad, but they're definitely, Jay Moore is the center of a sitcom,
well,
for sure.
There you go. This is what I'm saying. Like that's what.
Yeah, but Jay Moore makes more sense. Like Jim Belushi is particularly perplexing to me.
Just
why
because
anybody thinks he is a good idea.
Well, but that's the thing. So his brother is dead, right? And everybody who has any sort of nostalgia for that and the family and everything, then they're going to watch this. And then you got the other side, right? Courtney Thorne-Smith, not only from Melrose Place, but also from Ally McBeal, which had just like kind of wrapped its big ass run.
Yes.
I loved Ally McBeal. I really liked Melrose Place. So Courtney Thorne-Smith, a show with her would be a definite draw.
Anybody who likes Courtney Thorne-Smith should have been picketing the offices of who made this show.
Well, so we've talked about in the past the kind of meta show that's Kevin Can Fuck Himself that is done in this same way where they have and then they go behind it and it's actually this like gritty drama.
Very, very good.
Well, so we've talked about how King of Queens is kind of, that's actually Kevin James. There's another guy, like he was a comedian, ? Like he was friends with Adam Sandler. Is that how he got a sitcom?
No, yes. Like Kevin James was, and again, I'm not here to go to the
just
mat.
because they're all all younger. This
I'm
this
not.
guy's older?
I'm saying it because Kevin James and Ray Romano, and again, neither of them are guys that I really want to go to the mats for, but they were very, very successful stand-up comics. Were they at the level of Seinfeld, before he got his show? Yes. Like, they were guys that were doing, or the Comedy Central specials, the HBO specials.
I watched those Comedy Central specials, and those guys were not the ones that were on it. Now, maybe they were doing HBO specials and I didn't see them. Maybe they were more legit. But I'm, in 2001, I'm watching the shit out of Dave Attell. I am not watching Kevin James.
Yeah, sure. Look, I wasn't watching him either. All I'm saying is that he's a comedian with an act. So to me, there is some, it just makes some logical sense of
Jim Belushi's a guy already established in Hollywood that has connections.
See, but
so if anybody's going to make
he's
these
established as a very unappealing guy whose movies always do badly.
Well, maybe he'll do better in television. The show ran for 8 seasons.
He signed some kind of deal with the devil where that guy just his movies, I don't know, I guess Curly Sue did okay. I don't know.
I forgot he was in Curly Sue. I only remember the
That's
Noxzema hair
his
girl.
most successful thing. I grew up at a time where these movies, Mr. Destiny, Taking Care of Business, every year or two,
never heard of them.
There would be a starring vehicle for Jim Belushi, and it would just come and go. And I'd just be like, who the hell is this guy? And then it'd be like, oh, now he's a serious guy in this one. And it would be another just kind of it's not that I think he's a super bad actor. It is confusing to me that people gave him so many opportunities in such major ways when, his appeal is elusive to me.
He just keeps eking through. But so this show was kind of paired up with, I don't know if I don't think they started the same year, but at least in the second season of According to Jim, it was paired up with 8 Simple Rules. So you had another oafish dad, a much better version of this oafish dad kind of trying to learn lessons thing. So here is the quote that I, said we had to put a pin in earlier when we were talking about the Flintstones. So Jim Belushi, about According to Jim, the show was originally called Dad, and then before it went to pilot, or at some point post-pilot production, once it got picked up, they changed it to According to Jim. He was interviewed and he said, oh, this new, my new show, it's going to be great. At the end of every episode of shows like this, you always have the dad learning some lesson and apologizing and being contrite and whatever. There will be no apologizing in this show. He's not doing anything wrong. That is what he himself said about this show, and then said, and so many of the stories we're writing for this show come from my own life. Facepalm. I mean, seriously, could you say more about how much you suck, you're a bad person, you never learn your lessons, and why the hell should you apologize because you were never wrong in the first place? Now, we'll leave you with all of that, and then we'll tell you that the crux, the storyline of this episode is that he wants to go bowling on Thanksgiving.
Yes, on Thanksgiving.
And pieces out in the middle of the day while his wife is cooking dinner for his family and his, it's her brother.
He invites a half a dozen people over and doesn't tell them.
He invites his 2
doesn't
friends,
tell her.
yep, and her brother is there, who's also his best friend, and her sister is there, and the 3 kids, plus I guess it's 3 kids, 2 girls and a baby or something. This is, and then he just pieces off and pieces out and is like, yep, I'm going to go bowl. Bye.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on here. You talk about, we're not going to have him learn lessons and stuff. Do you know what year the show started?
This is 2001.
Okay. So Seinfeld, right? Larry David and Seinfeld, their motto famously was no hugs, no learning, right? They wanted their show to be different. And it's just such a classic example of like something good and original and interesting, and then people taking all the wrong lessons from it.
Well, and that's his thing. It's not that there weren't lessons to be had, but it's like, yeah, he was there. He kind of knows, but he doesn't have to apologize.
Yeah. So the end of this is going to be a grand romantic gesture being done to him.
Oh, yes.
By his wife.
Right.
Because she just sort of realizes, I don't know. We don't need to.
Yeah, well, he has this whole speech at the end where he is like, he's got a little monologue where he's like, I am always average. I'm an average dude. I'm an average this. I'm an average that. Meanwhile, you've got the hottest wife. Like, I've had a crush on Courtney Thorne Smith since I was 11 years old and Melrose Place started. Like, she is attractive. For you to say that you have been an average schlub your entire life is true, except for the fact there must be some redeeming quality. Otherwise, why would you be able to get with this hottie? Now, premise of the show is his best friend is her brother. But it's her little brother, like why would she go for her little brother's friend? I have a little brother. His friends are gross. Sorry, guys, but you're kids. Like, it's weird. Ugh, whatever.
Yeah. There's a lot. We're sort of jumping all over, but this is a pretty straightforward thing. What you're talking about in terms of the I've never been the best at anything. It's because this story is ultimately going to be the same exact story that the Malcolm in the Middle episode we talked about had back in the multiple timelines
it's
episode.
It's the perfect game.
It's the perfect game and the superstitions thing. So just to back up and just to call out a few choice moments here earlier in the episode when we're establishing this story that Jim has decided to go bowling on Thanksgiving instead of stay home and help host people.
Or even eat.
He walks in with groceries. He says something about like his fantasy, and she says, my fantasy is that you'll put those groceries away. And he goes, I'll put them away after you turn them into a meal. And then when he leaves to go bowling and she's mad at him for leaving and not helping, he says, like, you don't want me around.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. He says, you don't want me around distracting you. You need to focus on cooking. Last year, the turkey was a little dry.
Oh, yeah. And this is the only part in the episode where his wife gets a little, Courtney Thorne Smith plays Cheryl. This is the only point in the episode where Cheryl gets a good zinger kind of back at him. She's like, oh, you're right. Distractions would be bad. Ruby, Gracie, their two daughters, don't you want to go bowling with Daddy? And he's like, oh, I'm going to get you for this. And it's like, bitch, you get her every day, all the time. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, I would lose my mind if you said to me, I'm leaving on Thanksgiving. How rude is that? Like, what?
Yeah, I mean, it almost just becomes like just sort of like not a real thing, Like everything that he does is like you wouldn't have like a bowling tournament on Thanksgiving afternoon.
No, but that's the thing. It is this Toys for Tots tournament.
Yeah,
that's what he's playing in.
Yeah. I get it. The whole thing just seems weird. Yeah, when they start bowling, the brother-in-law you mentioned, his insult to him is to call him Aunt Andy. This is your classic turn of the century.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, look, he's a Mary. He's like that's as creative as this show gets. And then, it starts the thing of like he starts bowling the perfect game, and the superstitions start mounting. The little girl, his daughter, gives him a kiss. That becomes part of his little tradition.
They, by the way, are the best part of this episode.
The little kids.
The two little girls. Ruby is the older sister. Gracie is the younger sister. And then they have a baby named Kyle, who they will rapidly age in a few seasons.
Yeah.
Gracie is this little spitfire, and she is getting into it with Uncle Andy.
Yes, and that is funny.
And it's very, like, that part's really funny. And then Ruby is more of like a sweetheart. heart. She's not as spunky. And she says to her dad, "Good luck, Daddy," and gives him a good luck kiss. And that becomes one of the superstitions. So later on in the episode, when the power goes out, right before he's about to bowl his last, you get that extra half of a frame in bowling. If you bowl like a strike, right? You get that extra one. That's how you can get to 300 for a perfect game in the 10th frame. And so he's about to bowl that last one, and boom, the power goes out. And so he makes his daughter stay with him, and until hopefully the power comes back on, even though Garrett Morris, the guy who owns the bowling alley, is telling him it's fried and it's Thanksgiving, nobody's coming to fix it.
Yeah, and so again, it becomes even more outlandish. This is where I wrote down, like, this guy is a live-action Homer Simpson. Like, this is just not even real. So what we've been having so far is, like, more and more unexpected guests showing up at the house, say, like, just sort of like striding in and like demanding drinks and stuff. And Cheryl just kind of rolling her eyes and like, oh, what am I going to do? This husband of mine. And then we keep cutting back and forth to the bowling alley. And so now it's like the lights are out and it's Jim there in this dark, quiet bowling alley, praying to God.
The rest of like his best friend Andy, who's also his brother-in-law, has left with Gracie, and everybody else, like, they went back to eat Thanksgiving dinner, but he wouldn't let Ruby leave because she is part of the superstition. Even though Andy was also part of the superstition because he had to eat a hot dog, he was able to go and get some food and then whatever. And so, Thanksgiving is done. It's late at night and Cheryl comes to the bowling alley and kind of like walks in as we see Jim praying. Yeah.
And they have that whole heart to heart where he says, like, oh, there was this kid in school who would get 100 on every test. And I was just always thought, like, what would it be like to be that kid who always got 100? He's
to be perfect.
It's like, I wouldn't want to be Chinese, but still.
Oh my God, of course. So, you know what was great about that whole monologue, though? And this was what left me so surprised when we come back and the ending is the ending, because Courtney Thorne-Smith as Cheryl didn't give anything away that this was having any impact on her. Like, I thought she was like, this fucking guy. Yeah. And then when he makes the Chinese kid joke, she even is like, ugh. Like, she is not here for any of this nonsense. And I'm like, good for you. Like, I mean, you still married him, but whatever. But like, at least as much as she could have a little impact on who that character was as an actress, she is not going to react to his racist joke or give us any indication that this speech had any impact on her.
Yeah, and it shouldn't have an impact on her.
Yeah, because it was bullshit.
Yeah, it's one thing to say, like, look, here's why I care about bowling. Here's why it would be good for me to have this perfect game, but it just like has nothing to do with anything. Like, it's so telling that like the show would be like, all we need to do is explain what his feelings are, and then everyone in the show and watching the show will sort of understand. And it's like,
they didn't have the studio audience do the "aw" like they would normally do in that kind of stuff. Like maybe they were leading us up for it to be a surprise.
I mean, I think the ending is supposed to be a surprise what Cheryl does, but I think you're right. This Jim Belushi's mentality of like, this is going to be his show where he does things that make sense to him and he doesn't owe anything to anybody. And so like, Yeah, it's like, yes, this humanizes him, but it doesn't change the fact that, like, he is very, very inconsiderate to his wife.
I don't know that it humanizes him. He sounded like an immature little kid.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, why are you whining like a baby that you never got 100 on a test?
Yes.
Go home and eat the delicious Thanksgiving dinner and spend a holiday with your beautiful family, for the love of God.
Yes. All I mean by it humanizes him is that they're getting into what motivates him and what he's thinking, and that's fine, but it's like the show never asks him to consider what she's thinking or what anyone's thinking.
Oh, yeah, because why would it? Because it's not about her.
Yeah, that's kind of part of the problem. And so, so you come back from the final commercial break, and like we alluded to before, Courtney Thorne-Smith, Cheryl, has made like a candle-lit bowling alley, like
she's
something at the end of a movie.
Yeah, she's filled the gutters with candles, like hundreds of candles all along the lane, so he can see all the way down to the end. So even though the ball returns off and the pin cleaner upper isn't running and there's no lights, so you can't see the pins, she's illuminated it all for him. And so he can throw that final ball and get the perfect game. And she's brought the whole family back with him, and they're all there, and they all go through their little superstitious motions that he has had them do over and over again. And he does it. He bowls the perfect game. And don't they even do a little bit in slow motion? And they slow it down? I think they do. And, it's like everybody cheers and they're all happy. But it is like, I mean, when I tell you I was gobsmacked when the camera cut to Cheryl and she is like lighting the last candle in the bowling alley. I was like, what? What?
Yeah, it's one thing, like, by all means, nihilism is okay. Like, we love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. If you want a show that doesn't have a conscience and has kind of a mean edge to it and doesn't, is about bad people, that's totally fine. But there is something about this that, yes, just seems like such a swing and a miss in terms of, like, portraying a human relationship and just seeing her having to, or like taking it upon herself to make this grand romantic gesture to this guy that has just been a total dick.
Right.
And
you already made a grand romantic gesture, dear. You cook Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah. Like, again, it would be one thing if it's like, it's supposed to be a bizarre tone or it's supposed to be some sort of a parody of itself or something, but it seems
I'm searching for that. I'm like, please, maybe let there be a thread.
I think it really just is, again, like, it's just his point of view. It just wants you to understand, like, he was sad and he felt bad about himself and it was really important to him. Like, I just don't think it wants you to consider
self-indulgent nonsense. That's what I have to say about that. But we can't let this episode go or the show go without mentioning, we talked about Courtney Thorne-Smith, but we haven't talked about her sister, who is played by Kimberly Williams, and now Kimberly Williams Paisley, who is just one of my favorite Hallmark Channel actresses now. Anyway, I adore her. Her sister is Victoria from How I Met Your Mother, who was like what people thought she was going to be the mother for so many years. And so they do Hallmark movies together as like sisters, and they have like swap movies, even though they don't look alike. They like swap jobs and locations. Anyway, I just love that. And Courtney Thorne-Smith does Hallmark movies now too.
Yeah, and they get a B story that's better, like when they're just dealing with like the guys and, like back at Thanksgiving, like it's fine. But it's like you said, it's interesting that this was paired with the 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Daughter, because John Ritter is one of those characters that we talked about, just like Michael J. Fox, where they bring a certain warmth, a certain charisma, a certain silliness that, like, you know, it helps that their shows were good.
Well, but you could see Katie Sagal, who plays John Ritter's wife in 8 Simple Rules. You could see her, like, feeling bad for him, doing the thing, you know, putting candles on the bowling alley or whatever. But there would have been some type of, like, interstitials, and that would have made it a little bit of a, you know, he wouldn't have been such a totally flawed, horrible character. And when he did the monologue, it would have had more heart.
Yeah, well, not just that, like, they would sell, like, Jim Belushi is playing it straight, like, oh, this character has suffered and therefore, like, is entitled to this perfect game. Michael J. Fox or John Ritter would play the silliness of this character's self-obsession, and they would play it in a way that you just understand that their heart is in the right place when their character is being a chauvinist or an idiot or whatever. And Jim Belushi is the exact opposite. He's like, isn't it funny that she asked me to get groceries and I said no? Isn't that hilarious? Okay. I will say about this one, the bowling is a big part of it. The bowling, it probably plays more of a role in this than in any of the other shows.
Yeah, we do. It's similar to the Roseanne style, though. He's like bowling out off the camera, so we don't see it.
Yeah. Okay, let's finish this up with Big Bang Theory.
Season 3, episode 19, The Wheaton Recurrence.
Yeah, so this is another one that is going to be very heavy on the relationship stuff. We're at a pivotal point in the old will they, won't they with Leonard and Penny, right? We've watched Big Bang Theory a couple times, but their relationship either hadn't happened yet or was sort of, the sleepover one, I feel like it was... They were already an item. It had already come and gone, or it was just sort of like in the background or something. Yeah,
I don't remember even how long they actually dated on this show, but they weren't together for there was the whole will they, won't they, and that kind of quickly turned into they will, and that was probably somewhere in season 3. We're getting to the end of season 3 in this episode. Well,
you can tell that they're like... It begins with the post-coital scene, and the whole thing is going to be about this I love you thing that we'll explain. But even before we get to that, you kind of get the impression that's maybe like the 5th time they've had sex or something.
Right. It feels like a newer relationship. And then we have a reference later on when they're in the laundry room, and Leonard's like, it's fine that you didn't say I love you back right away because I have been in this relationship 2 years longer than you.
Troubling line. But before we get to that, I just wanted to set up that this is another one that it's dropping us into the middle of this ongoing serialized relationship story, but it decides for whatever reason the bowling alley would be a good sort of venue for this.
Yeah.
And also, let's give these guys credit. This is another one where they not only allow Kaylee Cuoco's character, Penny, to join the bowling alley, they depend on her.
Yeah. No, this cracked me up. This is kind of when you were talking about your lack of coordination, and that's why bowling wasn't easy for you. That's basically what we've got going on here. And then you have, Sheldon, who this is one of these things, like he grew up in the South and mom was on a bowling league, and so he knows how to bowl. So he's okay. He's not great, but he's okay. And you got Penny, who rocks, and then the other 3 are just sort of like dead weight on the team.
Yeah, and they play against other nerds, right? It's like a thing that goes through the
comic book store,
because they play against Stewart. But in that very first scene, Penny in bed with Leonard quotes, she says the do or do not, there is no try, which is a line from Empire Strikes Back, and she even knows to correct Leonard when he says you quoted Star Wars. And she's like, I quoted Empire Strikes Back, and he's like, oh. So that's enough for him to say, I love you, Penny, and she's freaked out. And look, like
she has like a major glitch. I thought her acting in that moment was so funny.
Great sitcom, like intimacy acting where she rolled. This is the very first scene, so it's before the opening theme, and she rolls over in bed.
Yeah, her eyes like they go like a million times blinking, and then they got real big.
Yeah, but he says I love you, and like we said, we're dropping in here. We don't know exactly what's going on in this relationship, but what I would argue is so far, these are all very like understandable human sort of misunderstandings or like people not being on the same page or whatever. He said, I love you. She's not ready to say that. Typical rom-com, sitcom stuff.
Right.
What's going to follow is he is going to join the echelons of Ross and all these other schmucks.
The most passive-aggressive,
and just totally not letting her off the hook and turning it into a thing that makes him just a total weirdo.
Well, yeah, he can't let it go, and she is like, we're not going to talk about it now because they are back at the bowling alley.
Yeah, I find this so strange. Like his impulse is throughout the rest of the episode to keep bothering her about it. Like,
well, but I think, and this is one of these like Leonard character things, right? Where he has these like OCD thoughts, he just can't get it out of his head. And so he is convincing himself, because he's been so therapized, because that's part of the storyline. His mom is this, PhD child psychologist and did all of her research on him. So he is like, he blames her for being all messed up. But so he like cannot get it out of his mind, but he's like, no, I'm fine. I'm over it. I am so over it. I can say these things blithely and they will come off as, glibly as I mean them. I'm easy breezy. It's fine. And he's trying to say things like he's easy breezy, but he isn't. And so they come in with this like undercutting. And this is where I think it differs from a Ross. When Ross would do it in Friends, there was no, he's trying to be easy breezy. There was no underlying heart beneath, because it was the 90s and guys didn't have to have that. They just got to act like assholes. They still do now. But in this instance, I think Johnny Galecki is playing this character, and he's also, I think, written to have the layer of, I really am trying to be okay with this. So I've convinced myself that I am okay with it, so I can say this. Oh shit, it still sounds passive aggressive.
Yeah. All that being as it may, I am very much team Penny when at the bowling alley he starts just kind of nagging her about it, basically, and she's just like, you gotta chill, like, you gotta leave me alone, and he just
that
won't.
First time in particular.
Yeah, and so she ends up storming out of the bowling alley, and they have to forfeit their bowling game. Now, I think we've already established that Stewart, the comic book guy, he's not able to bowl, and so his substitute is Will Wheaton, who is...
he is able to bowl, but there was somebody on their team couldn't come. And the reason this episode is titled The Wheaton Recurrence, it's because there was a previous episode that had Will Wheaton from the Star Trek franchise on it, and he and Sheldon are like arch nemesis.
Yeah, well, Sheldon says the Green Goblin to my Spider-Man when he's mentioned. And so, yeah, you could tell, obviously, he's been on the show before.
And it was like, it was one of these like huge fan favorite episodes. And so this was like a big deal to have him back on.
Yeah. And when he's sitting at the, he's waiting for his turn to bowl or whatever, Howard comes over and basically asks him if he banged Whoopi Goldberg. He's like, I need the juicy onset gossip. And he's like, Whoopi Goldberg, come on, give it to me. Like,
Did you ever hit that?
What was up with her? So they're playing against this comic book shop team that includes Ringer, Will Wheaton, and Penny gets upset that Leonard is badgering her, and so she storms out. They forfeit the game. And, it's again, another one of these episodes where it's like mostly a relationship episode dealing with this ongoing story, but it keeps giving us this little, just like the Roseanne episode, bowling scene, then back some other stuff, then okay, time for our rematch or our next game or whatever. And so we're headed back to the bowling lanes.
The action. And I think the way you mentioned how this was like Roseanne in that way, and I think you're right. And even though according to Jim did that, they would have a scene at the house and they go back to the bowling, the story in that didn't keep you invested in both aspects. It was like this and then that. Whereas in Roseanne and Big Bang, both Chuck Lorre shows, you are kind of going back and forth, but it's all furthering the storyline because it's not like the people there and the people here. It's the same people the next day and then that night and then the next day and then that night. And so that's what I think is fun about it, is that the story does keep moving forward rather than going back and forth. But the other thing that the other way I think this is like Roseanne is that you have John Goodman's character and Jim Parsons' characters. In Roseanne, both of them phenomenal actors, right?
Yes.
In Roseanne, you have Dan, he's just kind of always focused on the bowling. All this other stuff is going on around him. All these, things are happening, relationships, this, that, the other thing. He's just trying to bowl, just trying to focus on my game, just trying to focus on the ball, right? Then Sheldon, it kind of marries up with that because Sheldon is like, I am the ball.
Yeah, he keeps
be
telling
one
everybody,
with the ball.
Be the ball. That's his catchphrase. And I will say,
he's very focused on the bowling while all this other stuff is happening.
Yeah, he cares a lot about it. And yes, I had the thought that Jim Parsons really elevates this pretty I would say vaguely above average sitcom writing. When he does that be the ball stuff and then Howard sits down and he waits a beat and goes, you weren't the ball, that is not a super funny line on the page, but Jim Parsons really just always gets the best out of whatever they give him. And again, like Roseanne, they have this ongoing thing. Sheldon reflexively does the thank you, Jesus, and jumps into star pose when he gets a strike.
Yes.
But yeah, how does the game end? They have to forfeit again.
They have to forfeit again, right? So Sheldon has arranged this rematch, but we find this out later, when they're at the house in between the two bowling scenes. Sheldon goes to Penny and is like, this is still early in their sort of dynamic. They aren't really besties yet. We haven't had the soft kitty moment. So they still are kind of, digging at each other for most of the times. But anyway, so he goes over to her apartment and he's like, I brought you ice cream because I understand that women like to have ice cream when they're having relationship troubles. I've been reading the comic strip Kathy, so I understand you better.
Yeah.
And Penny goes, ack!
Yeah. Well, he says ack first. Right. He goes, yes, my understanding is that when women are in distress, they say ack and eat ice cream.
Yes. And so she says ack, and then he brings in the ice cream, and they have a little heart to heart where he is basically like, look, I've arranged this rematch, so you need to go talk to Leonard. You need to figure it out because he's crying and singing Alanis Morissette till 3:00 in the morning. So I can't sleep. And we're also, I want to win at bowling. So that's when the scene happens in the laundry room.
Yes. It is disturbing when Leonard says, I've been in this relationship for 2 years longer than you have.
Right.
To me, that's not a good thing to say to somebody. They met at the same time. It's
right. But he was obsessed with her from the beginning. And she didn't even notice him.
Yeah, but you can say, I had a crush on you since I met you. You don't say, I was in this relationship with you longer than you were with me. That's a weird ass thing to say. So you
learned how not to be cringe. I'm very proud of you, honey. So then they go back to the bowling alley, and he again, Leonard again, just can't get out of his own way. And even though he said, I'm fine, it's all good, I totally understand, in your own time, time, like whatever you want to, whatever time you need, it's fine. He gets in another dig about like the first time it was with the chili cheese fries. And then, she's like, I love these. And he's like, oh, you love those. The second time, I don't remember what it was, but we also have a little snake in the grass.
Will Wheaton is pulling the strings.
Yes.
Yeah. And so then Penny has a little moment with Will Wheaton where all he has to do, Machiavellian villain that he is just plant the little seed of like, what is it? He's talking about his girlfriend.
He said, I dated a girl once.
She did a kindness to me by breaking it off with me.
No,
right,
not
which
that.
She did.
Right. Yeah. He said, oh yeah, I dated a girl once and she had a hard time saying I love you. And she ended up stringing me along for 2 years before she ended it. It would have just been better if she ripped the Band-Aid off at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then Penny has another really great facial reaction. And then Leonard comes over and has some more sort of passive aggressive things to say. And she snaps and she's like, I think I can't do this anymore. We can't do this. I'm so sorry. I'm mean to you. I'm not right. And she runs out. And so then they have to forfeit again. Yeah.
And this is exactly why I think the bowling alley is such a great setting for things like this, because you have Will Wheaton's competitive motivations, like crisscrossing with their like romantic stuff. And, this ends with like, they lost their bowling game.
Right.
We don't really know what's going to happen with the future of their relationship. So it's just sort of ended.
It ends on the funny tag because it had been established earlier in the episode that whichever team won was going to, the other team had to do like an embarrassing thing of the winning team's choosing. So Stuart, the comic book shop guy, has chosen that the gang, the guys, all have to come to the comic book shop dressed up like female comic book characters.
Yeah.
So Howard is Batgirl and Koothrappali
he's
is
Catwoman. Halle Berry style Catwoman.
Yeah, and he's like, I feel so sexy. Let's see.
One of them's Wonder Woman.
That's I think Jim Parsons may be Wonder Woman. But anyway, they're all like the female, superheroes.
Yeah, they're in cosplay, they're in drag. It's the early 2000s, hardy har har.
Right.
And this one again, like it's
2010.
Fair enough. Again, they're like they're asking us, like Roseanne, like we get a little bit of like, okay, we're actually going to pay attention to the bowling game and get like the different teams and stuff. But again, it's more just like relationships unfolding and the sort of tension of having it all happen while there's a bowling game going on and you have to have these brief conversations. You're being constantly interrupted. You've got this pressure of the bowling and everything. It's loud. It's crazy. Like it just... that to me, it's a good reason to have it set there. It's a good use of it.
Yeah. So before we jump off of Big Bang, we had a guest on the podcast who really was kind of put out by Big Bang Theory in general, right? Saying that it was the whole premise of the show is making fun of the nerds. And that really kind of got to me because I never truly saw it that way. But, I can only consider myself sort of quirky nerdy, not like full nerdy, right? So maybe I'm not the right person to take it personally. So, but I think about that now every single time we watch this show, and I still kind of feel like this episode wasn't making fun of the nerds. Do you think it was?
No, I feel like I probably said this when we had that conversation with Jordan. It only makes fun of them insofar as every sitcom just exaggerates the traits of all the characters. So it's like, it's making fun of them in the sense that it's presenting a sitcom version of nerdiness, but it's like, Sheldon is weird and autistic and Leonard is weird and his thing. And, Kaylee Cuoco's character is sometimes a bit of a dumb blonde stereotype. And so it's like, it's making fun of everybody in that sense. I don't get the sense that the overall like character of the show, that the overall vibe is like these guys that they're
laugh
totally
at them.
the butt of the joke. It wavers between that and more just like, oh, like bosom buddies or anything else. They're
like you're supposed to laugh at the characters on a sitcom.
Yeah, and that they're just like, they're these young guys. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to have to deal with women and relationships and stuff. Like, at the end of the day, like, they're a bunch of young weirdos in the tradition of so many other young weirdo sitcoms with that flavor of, like, their physicists and their nerdy comic book guys.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I think.
It was a take on that show that I'd never heard before. And I am not like a lover of Big Bang by any means, but I did watch some of the show and I liked it-ish. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, it was one of those ones that was on, I would always watch it.
It had a much kinder attitude to its characters than According to Jim.
Yeah, well, okay, fair enough.
That's early 2000s rules of engagement.
Yeah, well, but again, this is 2010. This came kind of after that.
Yeah.
This is sort of contemporaneous with How I Met Your Mother. I think How I Met Your Mother started in like 2008, 9, something like that. So, this was kind of like they were the cool New Yorkers. These were like the Silicon Valley, nerdy types. Yeah, it was a take on the show that kind of always makes me think, like, do I need to rethink my take on this show, my feelings on this show? Because Jordan is a comic book guy, and he's like, yeah. I don't feel seen by this show. I feel teased by this show.
Yeah, but again, it's Chuck Lorre, it's just like the Charlie Sheen character, like I'm sure that, weird, like deadbeat Lothario guys don't feel seen by that show,
Fair enough.
What do we think of these? Lots going on here. Favorite bowling thing.
Again, this is another episode where I think this was a really good trope. Like, sitcoms have a way to find shine, even in the darkest places, according to Jim, when they have a bowling setting. That it gets them out of the house. It allows for different conflicts. It allows for stories to play in the foreground and the background. Yeah, it feels different because they're not on their same normal set, so they're moving differently, and it's fun. So I thought this was a great lineup. Now, none of that what I just said really applies to the Flintstones because it's animated, but yeah, I thought this was a great lineup. Even including, according to Jim, it was always nice to get a new show in there. It's especially fun to get a new hate watch in there. Just add it to the list of the guys that I go on rant on, that I rant about all the time. But yeah, so I think Roseanne was really a joy. It was a fun watch. It felt good. Like I said, it was a feel good episode. And I thought this episode of The Big Bang Theory, everybody was well written. Everybody had moments, and so that was a really fun watch too.
Yeah, I agree. This was a solid lineup. Even the shows that are extremely problematic and sort of repulsive, it's fun to get a sense of that sometimes. The Flintstones just goes down so easy. It's just always, it feels like it's over in 5 minutes. I love listening to Betty and Wilma talk. Those voices are just so funny to me, and their little conversations, reading the magazine and everything. Yeah, I feel like, according to Jim, we've said our piece, but, the Roseanne and Big Bang Theory were both like, I liked the way they used that, bowling alley setup as a backdrop and had this sort of looming thing of, we need to beat the so-and-so team so we don't have to, dress like Wonder Woman or drink beer out of our shoe or whatever. If anything, for me, I would actually give it to Big Bang Theory just because that, on the one hand, I don't know, Roseanne, it has those amazing performers. It's got John Goodman and Sandra Bernhard and everything, and Roseanne herself, for that matter.
Yeah, well, and that one even had David Crosby, so.
Yeah, that's true. But just at the same time, like, that story was a little bit like, oh, okay, well, who is this again? And okay, Roseanne feels left out or whatever. Whereas,
yeah,
like,
there wasn't really a story. It was very loosey-goosey slice of life. But that's what felt like that was, like I said, it was so mellow. It was just a mellow watch.
Yeah, definitely. But I think The Big Bang Theory is always a pleasant surprise for me because I had written it off as a, 2010s
schlocky Chuck Lorre show.
Chuck Lorre. Yeah. It's mainstream nonsense. I'm kind of above it. And now whenever we watch it, I'm like, oh, it's good. It's funny.
It's interesting. We've done a lot of Chuck Lorre. I mean, we did 2 on this episode, but I think we've never done 2.5 Men, have we? Maybe once?
Done it. I honestly don't remember if we've done it. We've done it once, like Midlife Crises.
Did we do it on
Midlife Crises? Maybe I just associate Charlie Sheen with
the Midlife Crisis. I think that's probably it.
But anyway, all of these were solid. I don't know. To me, it's like a neck and neck between Roseanne and Big Bang Theory. Yeah, I like the way these shows used the lanes. I like what took place on the lanes. What can I say?
There you go.
Okay, so much for bowling. Thank you again to Michael for suggesting this excellent trope. And what are we talking about next week? That is a mystery, even to us. But for now, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.